How do you absolutely crush it on 1L final exams? Well, if you're already in your 1L year, then you know that your final exams are the majority, if not the entirety, of your semester grade. And you know you're graded on a curve, meaning that you are competing directly with the people in your class. So if you're headed into 1L final exams, this one is for you. We're going to walk step by step through the exact process that I teach my 1L students so that they feel ready and prepared walking into that final exam room to give it everything they've got. And if you are interested in going through that process with me, breaking it down and building it out together, then definitely click here to apply for one of the one-on-one final exam deep dive sessions that I give at the end of each semester. And with that, guys, if you're ready to dive in, hit that like button and let's go. Step one is to build out our final exam study calendar so we know exactly where our time is going and what we're doing leading up to final exams. And in order to do that, we want to fast forward to the end and work our way backwards in 3 steps. And so that first step is going to be identifying our final exam days. So the literal days and times that we will be taking our final exams. That second step, working backwards, is where we're going to identify our final exam study days. Now, I call these days CAPE days, which stands for Canned Answer Practice Exam Days. And the reason I call it that is because when we talk about studying in law school, and specifically studying for final exams, that word is very nebulous and doesn't exactly explain what it is we're doing, which causes a lot of confusion and uncertainty. And so I like to call these days CAPE days because it literally tells you what you're doing every single one of those days. Now, the key here for our CAPE days is that we want to build out the same number of CAPE days, of final exam study days, per doctrinal course in accordance with how many credit hours each of those courses is. So if you have a doctrinal course that is 3 credit hours, we want to build out 3 CAPE days, 4 credit hours, 4 CAPE days, 5 credit hours, 5 CAPE days. You get it. Another key component of building out our CAPE days is that we want to make sure we are alternating our CAPE days so that we are taking full advantage of the time, energy, and attention that we have at the beginning of our final exam study period. Because as we go through that 2 to 3 week time frame, we are going to get more and more fatigued every single day. And so we want to give equal love and energy to all of our doctrinals as much as possible. And then step 3 of that process, working our way backwards, is we want to identify our last day of class. And that is really relevant because that is the day we are finally no longer learning new information and we can move on and transition into those final exam study days, those CAPE days, and of course, final exam days. This day, the last day of class, is also very important because that is our own personal internal outline due date. So we are shooting to have our outlines finished by that day, the last day of class, so that we can move on and transition into our CAPE days. Now, the biggest mistake that I see 1Ls make in building out their final exam study calendar is going in accordance with the random days that their final exams happen to be scheduled. And what I mean by this is that we tend to study all of our time before that first exam for the first exam. Then any time that is remaining, we study for the second exam. And then any time left over, we use for that third exam. And in doing that, we give disproportionate time and energy to our doctrinal courses simply by the random days that the final exams happen to be scheduled. And so in order to avoid falling into that trap, we need to make sure that we are allocating those final exam study days, aka CAPE days, really intentionally and in accordance with the credit hours of each doctrinal course, and of course alternating so that we're taking full advantage of when our energy is at its highest at the beginning of the final exam period. Step number 2 in our final exam strategy is building out our final exam study document. Now, you can call this whatever you want. Some people call it an attack outline, a short sheet, a pre-write. We call it canned answers. But essentially what this document is the most dialed in structure and the most dialed in language for all of the content in your doctrinal course. This is your weapon of choice heading into the final exam that is created by you. Now, in building out this document, we have a very intentional structure, and that structure is rules, rule parts, situation-specific rules, cases, and policy. And so as we build out these different topics, this is the structure that we want to follow. Now, in addition to this structure, there is one very key ingredient, and that is the analysis attack plan. And the analysis attack plan is the order in which we are going to apply these rules and rule parts and situation-specific rules if and when this particular issue gets triggered on a final exam. Now, the biggest mistake that I see 1Ls make when it comes to the final exam study document is thinking that your outline is your final exam study document. And although, yes, creating an outline is a really important step in the process, it is the messy middleman step. It is our first attempt at structuring and organizing and languaging what it is we are learning throughout the course of the semester. But we don't want it to be our final step. What I have seen work across the board is one more organized and condensed step so that we're taking our outline and then structuring it and dialing in that language so that we have one more layer of internalization and organization to be able to understand this stuff and actually use it in the final exam room. The third step to our final exam strategy is, of course, final exam writing, meaning putting words on the page that get us points in the final exam room. And even on final exams that have multiple choice questions, you will also have final exam essay answers, and they are going to make up the majority of your points. So these are really important to talk about. Now, I don't want to sugarcoat it. This is absolutely a separate skill set from the type of writing or the type of evaluation that we've had before law school. And it is complex and it is multi-layered. And so if you would like to walk through it together, definitely click here and apply for one of the one-on-one final exam deep dive sessions. But it is important to walk through what those steps are so that you're clear on how this is going to play out. The first phase of final exam writing is the pre-write phase, meaning all of the steps you're taking before you actually start writing your answer. And there are 5 of them. So number 1, we read the call of the question. Number 2, we issue spot the fact pattern, meaning underlining triggering facts and noting in the margins any legal issues that are being triggered. Number 3, we create our rough outline. Number 4, we do what I call big potato, medium potato, small potato, which means identifying the presence of each issue that you spotted in the fact pattern. And number 5, we want to choose our organizational style for that essay question, either by party, by issue, or chronologically. The second phase of final exam writing is, of course, writing your final exam answer, because we can't get any points if we haven't written anything on the page. Now, I don't want to sugarcoat it. This is by far the most complex and multi-layered part of the process. So when we're talking about writing out our final exam answer, the most common way that this is explained is an acronym called IRAC. It stands for Issue, Rule, Analysis, Conclusion. And it's not that IRAC is bad or wrong. It's just that it's incomplete, because where we're going to get 99% of our points from is the A, is the analysis. And IRAC doesn't tell us how to go about writing an analysis. And so in the most basic formulation, the best way I have ever found to explain what we're doing in the analysis section on a final exam essay answer is PWARF and DWARF. And those are acronyms that stand for P will argue, rule is met because of facts. Counter argument, D will argue, rule is not met because of facts. Now, once we have phase 1 and phase 2 locked in, we can move on to phase 3 of final exam writing, and that is the up levels. And here we're talking about all the little ways that we can get additional juicy points on our final exam essay answers that bump us further and further up the curve. And they come in 3 flavors. So that first flavor is your analysis. So different sources of law that we can draw from to create stronger analysis. So we're talking situation-specific rules, cases, and policy. That second flavor is your actual writing. So the language that you're choosing, the rules that you're selecting, and the time you are intentionally spending on the issues that you spot, and even each individual part of each issue. And that third flavor is your professor preferences. So asking your professor directly what he or she wants to say on a final exam answer, and reverse engineering that indirectly through model answers, student answers, and professor feedback. Now, when it comes to the biggest mistake that I see 1Ls make in the final exam writing piece, there are a lot, and I made a lot of them too myself when I was a 1L. But I guess I would say that the biggest mistake is this mentality that there's a right answer that you're looking for. When we're talking about final exam writing, we want to change from the perspective of right answer, wrong answer to argument, counter argument. So if you can keep in mind that there is no right answer, and instead your job is to make the arguments for why that rule language is met by the facts and make the counter arguments for why that rule language is not met by the facts, you are going to be able to generate and accumulate so many more points on your essay answers. All right, guys, so that's step 1, step 2, and step 3 of our final exam strategy. If you are a 1L heading into final exams and want to break down and build these out together so that you feel clear and confident heading into your final exams, definitely click here to apply for one of the one-on-one final exam deep dive sessions. And if you have any questions about final exams, about strategy, about my thoughts on them, definitely drop them in the comment section below. I'm happy to answer them. And with that, guys, I'll see y'all in the next video.